I don't know how you wouldn't know this, but KU's taking on Arizona. It's a pretty darn big game coming on Monday night. Number one team coming to Allen Fieldhouse. Jayhawks looking to extend their winning streak from 7 to 8. Arizona looking to stay unbeaten. We're going to break down the matchup on today's episode of the show.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going? Derek Johnson with another edition of Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. On today's edition, we are previewing Kansas versus Arizona as very, very big game in Allen Fieldhouse on a big Monday. We'll get to the Arizona scouting report, players to watch, Kansas keys to the game, all that and more on today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The winter games are on, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. So Kansas takes on Arizona. This is a gigantic opportunity for KU, a KU team that has really been playing good basketball of late. Obviously, the Utah game, probably the bit of the exception, but because of the difference in talent level, you were able to still win by double figures. But this is the opportunity to get your highest level win that you could possibly get of the season, potentially, right? You are looking at already a pretty strong resume for KU, but this is the type of win that could be a seed line difference come March, right? Like this could be the type of game that's the difference between getting a 2 or a 3 seed, between getting a 3 or a 4 seed or something like that. Like that is how big of an opportunity this is for KU. And also this gives KU an opportunity to, if you win this game, I think we do start talking about what is the path for KU trying to win at least a share of the Big 12 title. If you lose this game, not really a conversation, because then you'd have 3 losses in Big 12. Arizona would be undefeated. But if you win this game, they'd have 1, you'd have 2. It at least would be worth mentioning the conversation. So it's a gigantic opportunity for those perspectives. Arizona also comes in at 23-0. You have an opportunity to be their first loss of the season. They just broke the 96-97 Jayhawks record for most consecutive wins to open up a season among Big 12 schools. That team started 22-0. Arizona's now 23-0. And obviously the irony is not lost on me that Kansas team that started 22-0 wound up losing to Arizona in the Sweet 16. And now you have an opportunity to beat Arizona when they're having a pretty special season. So obviously a little bit of a different situation and scenario when those games happen. But point being, the foots or the boots reversed a little bit. I don't think that's the same. But anyway, so kind of a big opportunity there. And I think it's also an opportunity from a standpoint of like, we've seen Kansas get some big wins, the BYU game, winning at Texas Tech recently, like those are huge. In the non-con, being able to pick up like a road win at NC State and, blowing out your rival with Missouri and winning all 3 of your games in the Players era. Like we've seen KU beat some good opponents. And Iowa State's probably the best opponent that you've beaten from a metric standpoint. Like that's a top 5 team in the country. But it definitely feels like this is an opportunity to show that you are like not just the Big 12 title conversation, but like it feels like right now Kansas is one of those teams where it's like, they're good enough to make a run to a Final Four. They're good enough to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. A win over Arizona, does that get you into the conversation of they're one of the top tier teams for, when you're having those national title discussions? And it would be weird because, you have schools like Arizona and Duke and some of these schools have 0, 1, 2 losses and Kansas has 5 right now. But it would start to get that feeling a little bit if you win a game like this. So just a gigantic opportunity in general for KU. And I think I saw somewhere that KU has never beaten number 1 at home. I'm assuming that's an AP poll thing because I thought Oklahoma the year it was the triple overtime game. That was number 1 versus number 1. I think KU was 1 in the AP and OU was 1 in the coaches poll. But that's kind of a wild stat to kind of point out here that KU is going to have an opportunity to do that. Obviously, the amount of times you play number 1, like think about this, for instance, the 08 Kansas team, which is one of the best title winning teams we've seen in the modern era of college basketball. That team was like not really ever number 1 that season, right? Because you had all these other schools. So like you just think about to be number 1, it takes a lot of things to happen, then to happen to play that team at home, then to happen to have to beat them. Like it just takes a lot to go into that, but it is crazy given KU's level of play certainly here, right? Now both teams are entering a gauntlet. I guess for Kansas, you could argue that the gauntlet has already been entered, that started with the BYU game and went into the game in Lubbock and Texas Tech. But for Kansas, it's home against Arizona. It's at Iowa State. Then you're at Oklahoma State, who's a stingy team right now. Home against Cincinnati, that should be one that you should be able to take care of business. But then home against Houston, who all of a sudden is looking like, could they, find a way to I don't know, like they just don't lose Big 12 games. They're sitting at 9-1 in Big 12 play. And then you're at Arizona, and then you finish up with at K-State or at Arizona State and versus K-State. But really, these upcoming 6 games for KU it's a brutal gauntlet, and it's a brutal gauntlet for Arizona too. They're at Kansas, then they're home against Tech, then they're home against BYU, then they're at Houston. I mean, at Baylor versus Kansas versus Iowa State, that's a brutal gauntlet for them as well. So both these teams looking to kind of start out that gauntlet on the right foot and get a win kind of in the bank, so to speak. Now, as far as some of the storylines coming into this one, obviously you want to see you've got a battle of good freshmen, Darryn Peterson going against Braden Burries and Koa Pete for Arizona. You've got the battle of the big men. We've got a matchup here where Arizona is in their second year of the Big 12. Last year they split. KU won in Allen Fieldhouse. Arizona won like a week later in the Big 12 tournament. Is this a potential matchup of Bill Self versus future successor? That would be my hope. I've remained steadfast that like whenever Bill Self retires, like Tommy Lloyd's at the top of my list, and who knows how possible that is and everything. But that's the one that I want to go down swinging to try to get. And then I think kind of beyond all that, like will Marco Jackson play, right? Now this doesn't become as important as like, will Darryn Peterson finish the game? But we saw Marco miss the Utah game. And yes, this is somebody who's not a starter for KU, and he's playing less than 20 minutes per game. But in a game where you are taking on Arizona, where they are a super loaded and deep team, having as many hands on deck is going to be super important for KU. And then you think about some of the guards for Arizona. Jaden Bradley can go off for 20 plus points in an instant. Braden Burries can go off. Del Orso can get hot from 3 for them. Like, they have different options at the guard position. It would be nice for KU to be able to throw out El Marco for 15, 20, 25 minutes in the game, just to give a different look, or just to expend some defensive energy on those guys as being a good defender for KU. And the more El Marco minutes means the less potential, minutes of Jaden Dawson, Cole Rosario, which you don't know what you're going to get, and Jamari McDowell, who I think has struggled a little bit more in Big 12 play than in the non-con. So will El Marco play? Will he be 100%? Will he be impactful? I think those are going to be kind of key for KU in this game. All right, let's get to our Arizona scouting report, players to watch, keys for Kansas, player matchup of the game, all that and more. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of the curling matches. I don't know how you couldn't love the hockey games. The speed skating is, there's just so many niche events, and I don't know, there's something really cool about the pageantry too of the Olympics too. So the Winter Games are on. There's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. This episode is also brought to you by our Everydayer Club, which you can check out at lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer, lockedonpodcasts.com/everydayer. Get the ad-free version of Locked On Jayhawks, and you can join our Discord server. Okay, so KU takes on Arizona, and spoiler alert, the Wildcats are a really good basketball team. They're 23-0 on the season. That is the best start for a Big 12 team. They're 10-0 so far in Big 12 play. They've only even had 5 games decided by single digits. So 18 of their wins have been by double digits. They're just smacking teams right now. And 2 of those 5 games that have been single digits are against top 10 teams on KenPom. So, this is a wagon. They're number 1 on KenPom overall. They're a top 5 offense and the number 1 defense, right? This is the best team in college basketball. Now, I'm going to do 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses. Normally I do 4. The reason why is we're going to pack a lot into one of these strengths for Arizona, and it's hard to find 4 weaknesses. So we're going to do 3 and 3 here. The first one for Arizona, this one's going to be packed with a lot of stats, is size, which just leads to a myriad of positives for Arizona. They are 7th in the nation in average height, which They're big at the center position. They've got different guys they can throw at you the 4. They can play big. They can play small, which is still, with some bigger wings. They've got big wings they can play at the 3 and 4. This is just a very big team overall. And they play that way too. They are 99th percentile in offensive rebound rate. That's typically a, Tommy Lloyd attribute of a team. They're usually good rebounding teams. That's true again this year. 99th percentile offensive rebound rate, 97th percentile defensive rebound rate. So they're about as good of a rebounding team as you could ask for. 92nd percentile free throw attempt rate. Their size and ability to bludgeon you inside gets them to the free throw line. They're in the 90th percentile in 2-point percentage. And that kind of comes from all over. They've been solid at the rim. They've been solid in the paint, solid in the mid-range. They do it kind of collectively, but having that size obviously helps when you get around the rim. They're in the 100th percentile in paint points per game. So, part of this comes from, if you're running in transition, you're getting a paint point on a dunk or a layup, but also in the half court, they'll go at you in the post. They'll throw it to the man in the post. They'll run a pick and roll. They'll do different things. They'll have guards driving to the post. Elite team at getting shots at the rim. And then 99th percentile at rim defense. So they wall you off at the rim. They score easy shots at the rim. And that's kind of the base body line for, obviously Tommy Lloyd was with Mark Few at Gonzaga, and that's kind of what both guys have done. In an age where you get, the 3-point revolution, these guys have basically said, hey, okay, but if we still take and make the easiest shots, the at the rim shots at a high percentage, and limit you from taking and making those, that's going to make us analytically great. And then we're going to win the possession game by dominating the glass. And it's almost a little bit reminiscent of a Roy Williams system. They play fast. They'll play 2 bigs. They'll throw it inside. It's a little bit of that. And they've excelled at it this year. And obviously typically with Tommy Lloyd, but the fast break scoring, they're in the 99th percentile in fast break scoring per game. That's our next strength here. So they get out and run. The bigs will run the floor. Again, kind of making that comparison to some of those Roy Williams teams. And then the defensive chaos is definitely a strength for this team as well. I mean, it's the number 1 defense in the country. So overall, you would expect them to be good defensively, and they are. They are in the 85th percentile in steal rate. They're in the 80th percentile in block rate. They contest shots. They limit you. They have good individual defenders. They have size. So those are the biggest strengths for Arizona. And the 3 weaknesses, some of these are going to be stretching a bit because, I don't know, they're really good at a lot of things. For instance, they're in the 59th percentile in free throw percentage as a team. That's still above average. It feels weird to put that on as a weakness, but here we are because kind of drawing for straws here. Now, this one is interesting. 3-point shooting, I'm going to classify here. And you may look at the overall season stats for Arizona and go, what do you mean? They're shooting 36% from 3. How is that a weakness? That's actually pretty good. Okay, well, for one, if we just look at Big 12 play, Arizona is only shooting 32% on 3-point shots. That's not very good. And in Big 12 play, they're only shooting 21% on corner threes so far. So that's part of it. The other reason is this, though. They're in the 1st percentile, so basically at the bottom of college basketball in 3-point attempt rate. And the argument you could have against this is, okay, but if they're so good at scoring inside, they don't need to shoot a lot of threes, right? Play to your strengths. And obviously they're unbeaten, so it hasn't mattered that they're not taking very many threes. But I guess the reason I bring it up isn't to say that it's going to prevent them from doing this or that. Again, they're undefeated. The reason I bring it up is, to me, it shares a little bit of what the recipe would have to be to beat them. Would it have to be the other team gets hot from 3 and Arizona just doesn't shoot the volume to match? If the other team goes 14 of 30 from 3 and Arizona is going 7 of 20, can they make up for it in another area when it's against a good team, right? And maybe that just doesn't happen. Maybe the defense is too good. Maybe they, whatever. But maybe therein lies some of the recipe of how it kind of comes together. The last weakness, so to speak, here is pick and pop defense. Arizona's, again, it's above average, 52nd percentile nationally in points allowed per possession on pick and pop. So they're still fine at it, but every other play style, they're in the 81st percentile or better defensively. So that has been by far their worst defensive play style. The problem, though, for KU in trying to exploit that, Kansas is only in the 27th percentile for frequency of pick and pop plays. And they don't really have an easy solution to do it. I guess if Bryson Tiller's in there as the 5 for KU and Flory's on the bench, you can do it a little bit. But even then, Tiller is in the 44th percentile in pick and pop plays. So that's a little scary that they're weakest area to contend defensively is not one that KU utilizes. Our players to watch in this one, we're going to start with Darryn Peterson. I think Peterson, I mean, this feels very obvious, right? But Peterson's going to have a monster game for KU to win this one. He's averaging 20.5 points per game, 49% from the floor, 42 from three, 79 at the foul line. But over the last 7 games, the shooting percentage has dipped a little bit. So over the last 7 games, he's only shot 42% from the field in an individual game or better in 2 of the 7 games. They need the efficiency to go up in this one. They need them to have an efficient, like the BYU level game, but for 2 halves, basically. Bryson Tiller, 8.7 points, 6 rebounds per game. But over the last 4 games, it's been the opposite for Tiller. Tiller has been killing it. He's averaging 12 points, over 7 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists per game, and 1.8 stocks per game over the last 4. We're going to get into the center matchup later in our player matchups, but Tiller becomes huge in this one too, right? Whether Flory's on the bench and now he has to guard a 7'2" center in Krivas or one of the bigs that Arizona is going to throw out there. He also becomes important because when he's at the 4, Koa Pete is the main 4 for Arizona, and that's kind of a unique matchup for him. A 6'8" bowling ball guard who can get into your body. Can Tiller use his length and athleticism to kind of stay with him, or could he get in foul trouble from Koa Pete, or how does that matchup kind of work? I think there's a lot of interesting pieces of the impact potential for Bryson Tiller in this game. And then Tre White is the last one, 14.6 points per game, 7.1 rebounds. He's shooting 43% from 3. I think they need a big game from Tre White. Like, this needs to be a game where he's uncorking some threes. He's having an efficient offensive game. He's grabbing rebounds against a really good rebounding team. And he's going to have his hands full on both ends. Like, I think it's going to be really interesting if he's playing at the 4. Is he guarding Koa Pete, who again I think is going to be able to use some of his power into him? Now on the flip side, if he's playing at the 3, is he guarding Karchenkov? And then your off-ball defense becomes important because he's a good cutter and stuff. But also, is Karchenkov the probably best defender for Arizona? Is he guarding Peterson? Is he guarding Tre White? I think that's going to be kind of interesting. If he guards Peterson, then you really need Tre White to go off because that becomes more difficult for Darryn Peterson there, right? Our Arizona players to watch, we're going to start with Jaden Bradley, 13.8 points, 4.5 assists per game, 1.8 steals. He's shooting 51 from the floor, 42 from 3, 81 at the foul line. And he was excellent in Allen Fieldhouse last year. He had 21 points on 7 of 11 shooting, so he's not going to be afraid of the building or anything like that. Excellent player from the mid-range in rim attacks and pick and rolls, a really athletic guard. He's somebody who I kind of view as like the ultimate outcome for what you would hope Elmarko Jackson could become in a year or two. Maybe it helps to have Elmarko back to try to guard a guy like that. But Koa Pete is another one, 6'8", 235-pound wing forward who's averaging 14.6 points, 5.6 rebounds per game, shooting 56% from the field. Like I said, just a power bowling ball athlete who can, if you're not strong, he will work you into the post, right? He can post up, he can drive, he can score on cuts, he scores on pick and roll. So you have to have good off-ball defense on him too. He can throw down, alley-oops and stuff. Matchup problem for a lot of the other teams at the 4, and it'll be interesting how KU handles that. And then Ivan, I don't know if it's Ivan or Ivan, Karchenkov is the 6'7", 220-pound wing who is one of the best defenders in the country. He's averaging 9.4 points per game, 51% from the floor. Again, who does he guard? Do they throw him on Darryn Peterson to try to bother KU's best offensive player? He's also a good cutter and passer on the offensive end, but who he guards is going to be really important, and what can they do for KU? Let's get to our keys to the game for KU, player matchup to watch, Hawks to soar, all that next. This is Locked on Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by Wayfair. The new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh, all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work-from-home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. I love that you can find the pieces that match the style exactly that you want without spending a fortune, so you can get organized, refreshed, and also get back on track for way less in the new year. Head to wayfair.com right now and shop all things home. That's wayfair.com, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. This episode's also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move, because instead of just hoping that the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps match with the quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit specific criteria like skills, certifications, and with specific locations. That's kind of what you need with Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you're looking for with your business. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That is Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Thanks again for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks. Don't forget you can check out the Everydayer Club, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer to get the ad-free version of the show. Okay, our keys to the game for KU. Let's start with the KU offense. Lots of bigs pick and rolling. Arizona is still good defensively here, but as I was mentioning earlier, they're just like, I mean, they're the number one defense in the country. If we take a look at only their top 100 games, they're still good at it. They're 76th percentile, so that's still good. But it's their second weakest play style defensively. So again, you're trying to pick what you can when you're looking at bigs cutting and rolling is their second weakest, even though it's still good at 76th percentile, right? And again, the weakest is pick and pops, but KU is in the 11th percentile in pick and pops efficiency versus top 100 opponents. When you look at bigs cutting and rolling, KU is in the 99th percentile in top 100 games for bigs cutting and rolling. So, Tiller continuing to cut. He's done a really good job at that. Tiller and Flory hooking up on alley-oops and stuff like that. Pick and rolls with Council or Peterson, whoever. Those are going to be huge for KU to try to find something there. And then I think the other thing is this, like, you're not going to beat a team like them without at least having a decent three-point shooting game. Like, you're probably going to have to shoot 40% or better from three-point range, 8 of 20, 10 of 25, something like that. And I think a big part of that is Darryn Peterson has to be on one. I don't think you can win this game like you won the Texas Tech game. This has to be a BYU level performance for longer from Darryn Peterson. The KU defense, I mean, transition defense is obviously an obvious one. Arizona's in the 100th percentile in efficiency transition play. So get back. I thought KU did pretty good against BYU, especially in the first part of the game, but different animal with Arizona here. Rebounding is going to be key. They're a really good rebounding team on both ends. Specifically, can you do a good job on the defensive glass? We've seen moments this year where KU has struggled giving up too many offensive rebounds. That is a worry for me that Arizona could just bludgeon you with possessions and on the glass in this one. So that'll be an important factor for KU. And then just defending their big men in general. Arizona is in the 98th percentile for frequency, so they do it a lot. They're also in the 82nd percentile for efficiency, so they do it well, in bigs cutting and rolling. Okay. They're also in the 96th percentile in frequency. Again, they do it a lot. 86th percentile for efficiency. Also do it well in efficiency on post-ups. Okay. And they're in the 100th percentile for frequency with the 90th percentile in efficiency on a high-low game. So basically any way you cut it, they use the bigs, they use them efficiently, they use them well. KU's bigs have to come to play. I mean, you need another huge defensive performance from Flory, but it becomes more difficult because now you're playing up in size as opposed to more of an undersized Utah team. And you're playing a team who has a wealth of big man depth that can continue to throw at you, whereas KU does not have very much big man depth, right? Hawks to soar in this one, or let's start here, player matchup. We're going to go with Flory Bidunga versus, I don't know if it's Motiejus Krivas, who is the 7'2" center for Arizona. We've seen some games this year where Flory has struggled when he's gone up against bigger size, and that would be a little bit of a worry against 7'2" big. Now, if we remember how KU won that game versus Arizona on senior day last year, it was Hunter Dickinson going off for KU. They don't have the ability to just, hey, we can match your 7'2" dude with a 7'2" dude of our own. Although I guess last year was Henry Vasar. But point being, KU doesn't have that option. Flory's still a really good player, but it's different in this specific matchup, right? So how is he going to deal with the 7'2" size? How effective is he going to be on the defensive end? And then Krivas is in the 99th percentile in post-up scoring efficiency. He is about as good as anybody scoring on the post-up. What can KU do to try to deter that from taking over the game. Our Hawks to score in this one. Arizona's in the first percentile in the amount of mid-range twos that they allow per game. So they're giving up a lot of them shooting. Teams are shooting 45.5% on mid-range twos in Big 12 play against them. Now, to be clear, part of that is their defensive scheme. Their team who runs drop coverage, where you're basically going to have the big man sink in and try to prevent things at the rim. And basically they're going to say, hey, we're comfortable with you living in the mid-range because, again, like, think about it this way. 45% is a very high number for opposing teams to shoot against them in the mid-range. That's basically the equal of giving up a 30% three-point shot. So it's still not that efficient of a shot. But there's going to be moments throughout the game. I'm not saying this becomes the primary thing for KU, but there's going to be moments throughout the game, especially in late shot clock situation, where you don't have another option. And you're going to have to shoot one of those shots. And do you have a higher percentage chance of making them? Well, the answer for KU there in both, if we look at in the paint shots. So CBB Analytics defines at the rim, 4.5 feet within the rim. In the paint is everything in the paint outside the 4.5 feet, right? So that's kind of your floater range. And then the mid-range 2 area. For the floater range areas for KU, Melvin Council is somebody to try to, I guess, keep an eye on for KU, because he is taken 87 field goal attempts in that painted area, which by far leads the team. Second on the team is Bryson Tiller at 38. Tiller's only shooting 37% there, which is 34th percentile nationally. Council is shooting 41% there, 54th percentile nationally, but the number has gone up in Big 12 play for him. So those would be, maybe keep an eye there. And then when you look at mid-range twos, Darryn Peterson leads KU with 44 of them. He's shooting 48% on them. So I think that's where Darryn Peterson has to be a skilled artist in this game. Obviously, you need him to make some threes, but you're going to need him to make some mid-range shots in late shot clock situations. And he becomes my Hawk to soar as long as he can stay healthy and stay through the game for KU. I mean, obviously you could have a tough defensive matchup with Karchenkov and good rim protection for Arizona as well. So there really is no good matchup when you're playing the number one defense in the country, but I guess I'll just ride with the guy who might be the number one pick in the NBA draft. All right. We'll be back to recap whatever happens. Really interested to see what does happen between these two teams, KU and Arizona. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you can check out our postcast coming after the game. This has been Locked On Jayhawks. See you next time.